Welcome back to the Clerc podcast show. It is great to be back this week. If you tuned in last week, we talked about a little bit of road trip action with Damon and Mason and Colin. It was a great episode, and I'd highly recommend going back, checking it out if you haven't seen it, because we covered a lot of ground. We went over a lot of stories and stuff, and I feel like we gave some pretty good advice.
Yeah, covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there was just a lot of funny moments in it, too, talking about some of the dumb stuff we've done and going into all these bad neighborhoods and stuff like that. So it was a fun podcast. I'd highly recommend going back. And it was the first podcast we've done in a long time, so it's kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it season 2 or whatever, but it's kind of like the season 2.
I think you called it season 2.
Season 2, yeah, I did. I didn't know if we should call it season 2.
Maybe season 3, because season 2 started when we moved to Mankato.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
I really enjoyed the movies you put in while we were talking.
Yeah, give it kind of a background.
So check that out on YouTube.
Yeah. Go look. If you only listen to it, it'd be worth to watch it too, because you get kind of the complimentary video to go along with what we're talking about. So it kind of backs up the stories too. But to kind of transition into this week, we are having on a guest who has been on the podcast. I think this is the 3rd time.
That's correct, yeah.
And before we get anything, let's just introduce him. This is Adrian Lee, and he is an author. He is a paranormal investigator. He is a radio host, public speaker. Did I already say that? I don't know. He's a whole bunch of stuff.
Historian.
I don't know. Historian. Yeah. I don't know what else you want to add to that,
There's
Adrian.
many things I do badly. I just don't advertise them. I only talk about the things I do well.
Well, that's good. And thank you very much for coming on again. You know, obviously, if this is the 3rd time, we must be doing something right to keep getting you to come on. So it's just great to have you. And every time I think you've come on, it always ends up being like the longest podcast. We always talk for like an hour and a half, I think.
You recognize the fact I can talk a lot, which is perfect for radio.
It's
right?
good, yeah. People enjoy what you have, and I see you brought the ghost box back. Maybe we'll have to do some of that too later, because we had a lot of success doing that, and we were up on the last episode you were on. We were up on the 3rd floor, and so now we're in the library. And I don't know if you've ever done any readings in here.
I actually use this as a control room. I have investigated the Bark Centre in Wyndham twice now, going back about 8 or 9 years. But I actually use this room as a control area. So I've never investigated here. This was the room we put all our equipment out, and this was our base, if you like.
Oh, so this will be the first official investigation.
This reminds me of Ghostbusters. Do you remember the opening scene where they're in the library?
The books start flying out.
So if we see an old woman, I've got a plan. Okay, this is where we are.
There's a lot of stories around us.
Yeah, exactly. True. And well, we're talking about stories. You have a couple books here, Adrian. Before we get into anything, these are some of your other releases you've done. But you were talking before we started the podcast. You were talking about some new releases coming out. Do you kind of want to briefly touch on some of the other things you're writing about? Because you don't just write about ghosts and stuff. You're talking about UFOs.
Absolutely, yes, this is true. It's very interesting. I made it my ambition in life to write a book and have a book published once a year. But some of those books take 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years to write.
Oh, yeah.
So it just so happens that this year a book is coming out imminently in the next couple of months. I'm just going through the edits and the final draft as we speak. It's taken me 8 years. It's on ghosts and UFOs.
Wow.
Are they the same? The science and phenomena of paranormal activity, paranormal study. So it's a big, thick book. I've never written anything like that before, and you'd be amazed the amount of things that UFOs and ghosts have in common. So that's a groundbreaking book. I've done a lot of research on quantum theory and particle physics, and I've bound everything together. And if anyone mentions particle physics or UFOs to me again in the same sentence, I will shoot them. But that's coming out. Yeah. And I've spent the last couple of years working with the Upper Sioux Dakota up in Granite Falls, and I've got a book imminent that should be out in the fall on the ghosts and hauntings of the Dakota War of 1862. So all the battlefields, massacre sites, all of the interesting places, the cabins, the monuments.
Wow.
I've really dug into that, and that's a very interesting book. So, very exciting year for me.
Yeah, big time. And before we move on from that, you mentioned UFOs and paranormal. Would you call UFOs paranormal after doing your research?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think paranormal is a catch-all word for things that are beyond the norm, things that are almost metaphysical, behind what science can't prove.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're caught up. In the last couple of 100 years, science came to the fore and modernity. And all of a sudden, we got into this idea that if science can't prove it, it can't be true. And I don't know how we got into this situation, because science is always playing catch-up to man's wisdom and knowledge. When I was a small boy, I had a poster on my wall as a child of the solar system. And there was 9 planets, and that's all there was. When the Hubble telescope was launched in 1992, at this moment in time, I think they found 3,000 exoplanets. Well, science before 1992 would suggest they never existed. But they were always there.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that science couldn't prove they was there. So we get so caught up in this idea that if science can't prove it, it isn't true. But we know from the last statement I made, this isn't the norm, this isn't the convention. So I think being paranormal just means outside of what science can prove. But science will catch up. Science will get there eventually. I'm sure in my lifetime, ghosts will be proven, or UFOs and extraterrestrial life. If there's 400,000 planets out there, they estimate, as a low estimation, and there's 10 planets going around each star, just statistically it's probable. It would be ridiculous to suggest that we're the only people here based on those statistics. And I think by the end of this year, they'll have found a microbe on Mars. So if we find just a single microbe on Mars, on our nearest planet, it must be everywhere.
So
it's
a microbe,
everywhere.
by microbe you mean like
A cell.
some kind of living thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
I will put this out there now that I suspect if at the end of the year, if not into next year, they would have found a microbe on Mars. I almost guarantee it. If not, I'm happy to come back and you can laugh at me. But why that statement?
That's a bold statement.
That's a bold statement.
But if they find a single cell anywhere on Mars, our nearest planet, it must be everywhere, mustn't it? By default.
Yeah,
so
you
we'll
think
see
so.
what happens next. It's exciting times.
Well, and they got out and got a picture of an actual black hole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's big news. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because just several years ago, black holes were theory. They didn't know if that existed. Stephen Hawking wrote about black holes in terms of theory. They wanted to know why the universe is slowing down. The universe has always expanded, and now they've done calculations that suggest it's slowing down. And they think that dark matter, which is in the dark parts of the universe that we can't see, is the glue that holds everything together. And that was just theory. Yeah. Well, you're 100% correct. Just last week, we now have a picture of a black hole that not that long ago was considered to be theory.
Yeah.
So these are remarkable times to be living in. Don't believe anything science tells you. It's rubbish. Everything's not true.
Dang. That's another bold statement, Adrian. But didn't the Mars rover just shut off or like it died?
Yeah, they've got so many probes up there at the moment.
Oh, they do?
And
I thought that was the only one.
I think they've got a lot going up there. There's stuff that's already there.
Yeah, it was only supposed to last like 6 months maybe, and then
really?
It just kept going, and they think maybe a dust storm got on the solar panels,
and then it just died.
If it just kept going, it obviously wasn't made by Ford. It must have been made by
there, I agree with that. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Controversial.
Another bold statement.
F-950.
Dang. Well, and to kind of go off of that as well, to move on past UFOs and everything, how do you kind of get into doing that? Because you're really interested in paranormal ghost stuff.
Sure.
How do you be like, well, I'm going to start thinking about doing aliens or UFOs? Like, to me, I can't see the correlation really between the two.
It was an interesting set of circumstances, but my background, as you know, is in art history. I'm an art historian. That's my qualifications. And I studied the early Renaissance period to the highest level. And I started finding UFOs in Renaissance paintings, in the background of paintings. And they're all there for you to look up. You can go online and see these UFOs in 14th, 13th century pieces of art all the way around the Mediterranean. So MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network.
That's what Michael was talking to us about, MUFON,
Huge worldwide organisation, non-profit. If you see a UFO, the police will put you in touch with MUFON, and that's who you would report that to, and they would then send field investigators out. So I was asked many, many years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, to do a talk on UFOs in Renaissance art at a MUFON meeting. And I must have been the only person in the history of MUFON that stood at the front of the auditorium and put my hand up and said, I know nothing about UFOs, which is what you want at the beginning of a talk on UFOs.
Yeah.
And I said, but I know a lot about art history and I know a lot about ghosts and hauntings, and this is what I've got. Yeah. What then happened was in that symposium, I met some very influential people. I met a gentleman called Ted Phillips, and he was the assistant with Hynek on Project Blue Book. And he started talking to me, and he was investigating his own ghosts and his own paranormal activity. And he thought there was a link between the ghosts and the paranormal activity and UFO sightings and UFO landings.
Really?
And Ted Phillips is one of the leading experts on trace elements. So when they leave burn marks in the soil, high radiation levels, cattle mutations, people say no such thing as UFOs, but then there's always that pesky trace evidence that gets in the way, right?
It's come up in a lot of our podcasts, like the pyramids even, how theories and Stonehenge and Just like a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. That's crazy.
So what then happened was I realised that a ufologist has exactly the same equipment in their case that I have as a paranormal investigator.
Really?
And then things develop from there. You know,
They
the
have
idea
EVP and everything like that?
Yep.
Really?
Measurements for radiation, measurements for ambient temperature, electromagnetic fields. I mean, literally, they have the same data collecting equipment as I do. So that got me thinking.
Huh.
And then there's areas where they cross over in terms of the energy they use. There's areas where they cross over in terms of how they get around. Very simply, just to keep this within a sentence, because I realise you've only asked me one question so far.
No, that's all right.
A lot of UFO sightings tend to be very erratic. And this has been reported. There was a famous case called the Tehran dogfight, where over Tehran in the 1970s, two interceptors, I think they were F-111s, went out to see a UFO. And this has happened in Belgium in the 1990s. Everywhere you see this erratic flight pattern of a UFO being here, then there, then there. And the journey doesn't seem to be that important. So if I said to you right now, imagine going to Walmart. You don't imagine the journey to Walmart. You imagine standing in Walmart or outside of Walmart.
Yep.
So I was under the impression, and this has been backed up by abductees that have been taken on board UFOs, that the aliens think they want to be somewhere, so they are. So they think they want to be here, so they're here. They want to be there, so they're there. To traverse the galaxy, you can't be using fossil fuel. And the way they move around, and the way that there's this collective knowledge when you get abducted, they're all sat around a centre console. The idea that they think themselves somewhere, so they're there. Well, that's what a ghost does.
Yeah, I was going to say, you brought that up in the last podcast about how
your
ghosts go
bones are in the cemetery. Your ashes are on an urn in the mantelpiece. But if you want to haunt your house, you have to think yourself there. Mm-hmm. So in effect, they're using the same methods of getting around.
Wow.
And it makes me wonder if a UFO or aliens have actually looked at paranormal activity and ghosts and thought, wow, that's a neat thing to do. Let's biomimic that. Let's copy that.
Would you phrase that teleporting, or would it have a different term?
That's a good question, yeah.
Teleporting requires a mechanical assistance, I would suggest. So the UFO would be part of that combination. A ghost wouldn't be teleporting.
No.
For me personally, a teleporting would involve some equipment of some description, I guess. And there's been other things like remote viewing. But with remote viewing, for example, you're still sat here, even though you're wandering around a Soviet arms missile base somewhere in Siberia. You're still sat here. And the trouble with teleportation is the fact that if you're in A and you want to go to B, you have to destroy A to make B happen. So I think with teleportation, there's a sense of in the here and now that gets destroyed and then replicated in position B. But then what happens to your memories? What happens to your feelings? What happens to esoterical things outside of the physical? So there are some issues with teleportation, in my own opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they do. So there's enough material there to write 95,000 words, which is what I've done.
So you touch on that in the book. You talk about how aliens are going from point A to point B without traveling, and the same thing happens with ghosts, and how you came to the conclusion that they're similar. That's kind of the whole, not the whole thesis of the book, but that's kind of like where you got your whole idea to compare the two. Yeah.
In my experience, there's like a 4-part plan. If you see a UFO in the sky, you're aware that something's about to manifest and something's happening. There's a fuss. Then in the second part, it starts to appear. So it goes kind of diaphanous, it's see-through, and it's starting to form. In the third instance, it's solidly there. You can see it. It's there. In the fourth instance, the mass arrives. So in between stage 3 and 4 for a UFO, some sort of anti-gravity device or some sense of propulsion is required between 3 and 4. So when you see it, between stage 3 and 4, they have to implement something, otherwise it's going to fall out of the sky. If you then apply that to ghosts, whenever I've seen a ghost, you're aware something's about to happen, there's a fuss, something's happening, then it starts to manifest and you see it coming through and it's see-through, then it's there and you can see it wandering around, but it can go through walls, it can go through solid matter, and then fourthly, the mass arrives. It can throw things at me. It can scratch me. It can bite me. So just on those 4 things alone, they share everything. It's a very interesting way of looking at things, and they share everything. Obviously, one's an alien from another planet in another part of the universe, and one's your dead grandmother. But the way they overlap is incredible.
No, and the weird thing to me about this whole thing is people. You said you talked about abductees.
Yes.
Ghosts don't take people, but aliens do. Is there a reason for that? Why would an alien use a human or take a human or whatever, but a ghost would never actually physically remove somebody from the earth or take them somewhere else?
I wonder where a ghost would remove someone to. An alien would remove someone through their ceiling of their house, through the roof line, and into a vehicle of some description. So even that process requires someone to walk through a wall or to go through solid matter in the same way that a ghost does. So I think that would boil down to the fact of where is the ghost taking you?
Yeah, true.
Compared to the UFO that obviously is bringing you on board a vessel at that point.
Where are they bringing you, though, the UFO or the alien that would bring you onto their vessel? Where, like, what is the purpose of abducting somebody?
There's different aliens. I'm not an expert on aliens. I've just
I was just figuring turn into an alien podcast.
Well, abductees would say there's two reasons. One is to implant information and knowledge. So some people are told about the future. Some people are told the Earth is killing itself. We need, greenhouse gases and everything else, and we're ruining the planet. So those aliens that are benevolent and want to pass on information and knowledge, and like everything in society, you then get malevolent aliens. That
get the good alien and the bad alien.
That's right. and you can look at it like you're a guinea pig, and they're going to look at you and prod you and put things in you and harvest. I don't know whether we can say this on this podcast, but they have been known to harvest sperm, for example. So,
you can say whatever you want, Adrian.
Yeah, you'll regret that in a moment. You'll see how quickly this escalates for you. So they would have different reasons for bringing you on board, I guess.
Huh.
But I'm only going by what's been said. I mean, I have seen UFOs. I've never been abducted, thankfully.
Yeah.
I think the main thing for me personally is that I would be happy to go into a basement and talk to a dead person in the here and now, because I know what it is to be dead. I've seen dead people. I've talked to dead people. I'm alive. So by default, I know what it is to be alive and then to be dead. I have no idea what's coming along. If I'm standing in a cornfield at 3 o'clock in the morning, banging a drum and firing a laser pen into the eye, because whatever comes down to say hello, I've got no concept of. I don't share her humanity with it. I share humanity with a ghost because it's one of my relatives or somebody from the past, and we have a connection, right? We share humanity. We don't share humanity with a non-human entity. Yeah. So I'm happy to engage with a ghost and say, here I am, come and talk to me. I'd be more reluctant to stand in a field and say, here I am, come and talk to me, because at that point, I've no idea what's coming.
The fear of the unknown, pretty much. You don't know what's going to happen.
And I'm fully aware that, a ghost can scratch me and a ghost can bite me, and I have got photographs we're going to look at later. I think UFOs, aliens in particular, can be much more malevolent. They will mess your life up.
Yeah.
People, end up being alcoholics and taking drugs. They will seriously mess your life up.
Jeez.
People don't believe you. They come and take you every night, so you can't get any sleep. You wake up in the morning covered in scars.
Oh, it's repetitive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Jeez.
And you can go and hide in another hotel or hide in your car. They'll still come and find you.
Sounds like the mafia, pretty much.
Yeah, they can take you. There's stories of people that have tied themselves to the bed, and they've woken up in the morning, and the knots that have tied them to the bed are different to the ones that they tied. People have chained themselves to things, and the
Boy Scouts are different on the spaceship.
This is crazy stuff to me. So I never heard any of this. So I didn't know that you could get abducted more than once. I thought if you got abducted once, you had bad luck. I mean, this is like getting struck by lightning, pretty much.
Do you have one of those like lightsaber star pointers that you point up into the stars?
I have laser pens.
Like the really strong one.
They're illegal.
What do they do?
Well, there's some that are like super strength that like for looking at astronomy and stuff and telling stories.
Yeah.
Like you go out to the petroglyphs and you can hold them up, and they're amazing. And have we brought up the Native American book yet?
No, we didn't bring up the Native American.
I want to hear about the triangle like that because of the stories, and they're deep into ancestry.
Sure.
And they talked a lot about the stars, and they had stories from the stars, and kind of interested if in your studies you've heard any story. You said you've talked to some the Native Americans, and
yes.
If they have stories of the UFOs or things like that being with the stars.
Yeah, or if they call it something else. Maybe they don't call it a UFO.
It is a felony to shine a laser pen into the sky, so be aware of it.
Disclaimer to everybody.
Just don't go out and do that.
You've never done it, right, Adrian?
The FBI. Well, I do have laser grid pens that I use in rooms to do investigating, and I have shone them into graveyards. You can get a laser grid pen that just grids everything.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We had shortwave radios. It was part of a petroglyphs thing, and people were squelching in, like picking up things. And,
Really?
Yeah, we're hearing stories about the Native American stories that they told. And
if you want to read some really interesting material on alien abductions, go online, search for the Journal of Alien Abductions, and it's a free magazine, and it's people talking on there about their abductions, professionals, psychologists, hypnotherapists, people giving their accounts of interviewing people that have been abducted. So the Journal of Alien Abduction would be a good place to start if you wish to read around this, and it references everything. It's incredible how many people are abducted and their experiences. Now, I will say a lot of them that I've read, you tend to question and you think, yeah, that person's not fully with us. They're operating outside of a normal framework of society. But there's others, you know, that wake up covered in scars and covered in incision marks.
Wow.
And they're not getting any sleep. I mean, there's a list of things you can look for in terms of being abducted, which would suggest you have been.
Well, and as we're talking about that too, one more question kind of about the alien thing. Maybe you don't know, but I've always been curious about crop circles or, you know, shapes being like carved or not carved, but like, what do you call it, mowed or whatever into the flattened. Yeah. How do you know anything about that or done any research on that?
I'm kind of stuck in the middle a little bit because I have investigated them in Britain. There were some crop circles in Bedfordshire, and I was asked to go out, and there was high levels of radiation and high levels of EMF activity inside the crop circle. And crop circles have been spoken about. I would suggest that's one of the earliest forms of communication because there's a history of crop circles being reported that goes back in Britain to the 16th and 15th century, where they talk about crops being flattened in unusual patterns. I am aware, like everything, that there's people that hoax these things. So what's overtaken that is people messing around on the summer solstice with a plank of wood and a bottle of hard cider, and then anything can happen. So I think, like everything paranormal, you have to look at it objectively. You have to be very skeptical. But I think originally they would do that. It just seems very odd. If you've got a message to give mankind and you're capable of traversing the universe using telepathy, taking someone through the roofline and into a vehicle, and then to be able to do experiments on them, why you would write messages in corn would seem a very odd thing to be doing. Why not just tell us at that point?
They have found, though, like perfectly symmetric circles and stuff that humans really wouldn't have been able to do, and shapes and stuff. So that's what's weird to me. Like, somebody really would have had to put a lot of time into doing this without anyone knowing or whatever.
Your tractor can do it now. GPS even is
true. I mean,
no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, but have you ever seen some of these crazy? There's some really, really weird.
And I really do like the symbolism of. I always look into the symbolism of things. So.
It's just something I remembered, and I'm like, maybe Adrian knows something about it.
The expert on crop circles was a gentleman called Reg Presley, and he was the lead singer of the Trogs. And because you're too young to remember, they sung Wild Thing.
Oh, gotcha.
And many other hits. And I believe he's died now. I've committed to that now, so I hope he's
dead.
He may come and tap on my shoulder in spirit.
Yeah, there you go.
But he'd be an expert. If you wanted to look on crop circles, he spent a lot of his retirement and a lot of his money from his record sales ploughing that into looking at crop circles. But to go back to your Native American, I do think at places like the Jeffers petroglyphs, there's some really interesting symbolism where there's three-legged men, there's cycloptic people with one giant eye. There are some strange images out there, and a lot of what's on Native American carvings does look like star patterns. Orion's belt would be a good example of that. But then those cultures, it's very easy for us in our own culture to sit back and say, oh, they're very savage or they weren't intelligent, whatever. You always think the culture you're in and the period you're in history is the ultimate intelligence. But we still don't know how Stonehenge was made. We still don't quite know how the pyramids were put together.
And around here, there are secret summer solstice and winter solstice patterns out by the Jeffers petroglyphs all around that area that people are studying, and they track things in the stars.
The only thing I would add to that is that stretch of land was put aside for almost shamanic practice. So you would go out there as a warrior, or you would go out there and take some magic mushrooms and get yourself into a state of being high. And then it's no wonder that you then see perhaps drawings that look a little odd or a little strange, or perhaps don't look quite human. But you're absolutely right. There is stuff. The thing I would add to that as a historian that studied art is that we weren't there. We don't have a time machine. It's very difficult looking at artwork that was produced 1,000 years ago and having any concept of why it's there and the culture that put that together. That's called iconography. When the British Empire started bringing back strange African masks in the 10s and the 1920s and Egyptian artifacts, we had no clue about the culture. We had no clue where they came from.
Yep.
All you've got's the artifact. So that's iconography. You study the artifact, you work out which type of wood it is, where that wood is found, how it was carved, and you actually, like Sherlock Holmes, deal with what's available and what's in front of you and kind of work your way backwards. So it's a very interesting way of
like
studying
the Curse of
art.
Oak Island that we were talking about. We won't get started on that.
Unbelievable.
We don't need to talk about that.
1963.
The difference is that we're all intelligent and they know nothing about history. So they're all geologists and they're good in their own field, but they're finding artifacts that they have no concept of or they haven't studied. And at that point, things start to fall apart, don't they, to a degree?
Oh, yeah. And we were talking about communication with the crop circles and stuff. One of the things I said I wanted to talk to you about, Adrian, was contact with paranormal. And so I wrote down some different things on here, and we can just kind of go through them. The first thing I wrote down, the first thing that came to mind, seances. I've always been curious. We're not going to do one day.
Right.
but I've always been curious, how does it work? What's the use for it? I know it has something to do with contact, and there's a chain of contact that you don't want to break. How can you kind of explain that, or if you've ever done one?
Seances were very popular. They came about in Victorian households in about 1860, 1870, and they were very popular in this area.
Really?
I know for a fact that General LeDuc at the LeDuc Estate House in Hastings used to do seances a couple of times a week in the 1860s, 1870s.
Wow.
In the Boggs House in Mantorville, they did seances there. The Palmer House, when it was the Sauk Centre House in Sauk Centre, you can read the local newspaper from the 1860s, and it advertised spiritualists doing seances a couple of times a week there, and it was very, very popular. You are trying to generate an energy. You're asking for an entity to come through and talk to you, and we can do that now. We could say, if there's an entity here, make a banging noise. You can do that anywhere.
Yep.
The only issue I have with that, and I've never done a seance where we've asked a spirit to come through any individual. We're not channeling. So what you need to differentiate is the difference between sitting around a table and saying, "Are you there, Auntie Barbara? Come through, make a noise." Because she's not going to jump into us. We don't want to be talking in Auntie Barbara's voice, right?
No.
This would be a bad thing. So I have done seances as a psychic. I did a really good seance at the Volstead House in Granite Falls last October, and the place was packed. And I spent 2 or 3 hours contacting everyone's deceased relatives, and they were talking to me. They were chatting in my ear like you're talking to me now. And I'm just relaying the messages. I see that as being safe. I see that as not conjuring anything up. We're all protected and it's all good. The issue I have would be things like Ouija boards, or where you've got to move things around, where the entity's got to come through you.
Yep.
What I don't want to happen is for an entity to come into me. They don't have permission to do that.
Yep.
You can sit and talk in my ear, but you're not going to control me. You're not going to start moving a planchette around by coming into me. And when we use the ghost box, the last time I was here, the spirits and the ghosts are talking through the ghost box.
Yep.
Some people call that an electronic Ouija board.
They don't need to move you or anything.
Yeah, I'm not involved in that process. This is just the receiver to hear what they're saying.
I've got kind of an off-the-wall question, if you don't mind. Like, if you do a seance or you're opening yourself up to spirits, do you feel that it's easier to have a loved one or have someone in mind if you're looking for a loved one, like that connection with someone that you love to come and talk to you, or if you just open yourself up and see what you get? Does that make sense?
I've done both. If a client comes to talk to me and I'm working one-on-one, I would have booked that weeks in advance. So that individual comes to me, and their deceased relatives already know they're coming to meet me. So at that point, they're already there. They're enthusiastic. They want to talk. There have been occasions, for example, the seance I did in the Volstead House, where I just wanted to see what was there and what would come through. So I have done both, but it's all about intentions. You have to remember that if it's booked weeks in advance, those dead people already are aware that you're going to see the strange Englishman and have that conversation. Mm-hmm. So in actuality, some of those ghosts and spirits have actually come through when I've been in the shower or sitting in the car on the way there, because they're so enthusiastic. And I'm like, can't you wait until tomorrow?
Wow.
Because they want to come through and they want to talk. So I've done both, and it really doesn't matter too much. I can't think of occasion in the last 25 years where nothing has happened and I've sat there with nothing taking place. they're so enthusiastic and they're aware what's going to happen that they're there before I even have to do anything, before I even have to focus on that, I would suggest.
Now, Peter, if you go on the files on the desktop, there is a folder in there about seances. It's that one. You could just run through those pictures, start with number 1. Now, guys, these are some vintage seance pictures, and I thought these were kind of creepy too, and just gives you a better idea of what it would have looked like. So here appears to be a group of people around a table that's floating.
They're doing table tipping.
How does that? What is that
I've
about?
actually experienced that. I worked with a psychic in Essex in a place called Braintree in England, and he was an expert on table tipping. And there was a big solid oak table. We all put our hands on it. It was pitch dark, and the table started levitating and floating, as you see in this picture.
Really?
I'm a skeptic. Everything I do is based on being skeptical. I'm a historian. I want to deal with facts.
Yep.
I have a science background as well. I can't work out how he did that outside of the paranormal. I'd like to sit here and say, oh, he was moving it with his foot, or he had some wires. And I looked at everything. Like yourself, you're looking under the table, you're checking to make sure there's no shenanigans.
Yep.
That one guy kind of looks like Peter with the mustache. Yeah. Great grandfather.
Grandfather Pete over there.
Famous table tipper from the Midwest.
And if you go to the next one, there's a couple more where they do table tipping. Here's an older picture. I don't have all the information. You could zoom in too, Pete, on these a little bit. Up on the top, you might have to use the...
And this is what
there's
they
a magnifying
did.
glass on the left, Pete.
You can imagine
middle,
that.
yeah, right there.
That could be the parlour house of the Leduc estate, right?
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of charlatans out there. I will give you some examples of what they would do. There was an occasion where they'd have a trumpet or a tambourine or a drum on the table, and they'd also have the same instruments under the table. And the gentleman would take his shoes and socks off, and you'd be sat in the dark, and then the guy would be banging the drum with his foot, or he'd have a little bulb on the end of the trumpet, like an old-fashioned car. And there was ways in which they manufactured making things up. There was a couple of twins that used to do seances, and one of them could click their toes. They had double jointed toes, so when they asked for a knocking sound, one of the girls would just click her toes and you would hear that knocking. So there are examples of where foul play would be taking place.
Yeah, it says table and air right there. Seance at the Baron von Ernst. Table and air.
That guy on the right's seeing something scary. You see his eyes?
Yeah, it looks like he's seen something over there.
Yeah, he's seen her bustle. He can't believe it. Look at the crinoline.
Yeah, go to the next one here, Pete. Let's see. Oh, this is a weird one here. I don't even know what's going on. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this, Adrian. Some kind of energy coming between her or something like that.
I have seen energy. I mean, obviously, orbs would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Most orbs, 99% of orbs, of course, are pollen and dust, and they're just reflecting the flash back to the camera. But I have seen orbs with my naked eye, and I've walked through them like fairy lights on the floor.
Yeah. This is weird, though. It almost looks like handcuffs or something running between her.
I almost wonder, back in the day, that electricity was kind of a newfangled piece of modernity, and it makes me wonder, like Tesla with his experiments, whether they were starting to put things together. Again, my skeptical side, that may well have happened. I have seen energy. But you're thinking to yourself, that's a discharge, like a Van de Graaff generator, right, between two bits of metal.
Cool pictures. Though.
Yeah, I found these on some vintage. Here's another one.
Could be the flash.
Yeah.
Reflecting on.
Yeah, who knows? Another one here sitting around a table, and there's a floating mandolin there. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, Adrian.
I've not seen any of these pictures before.
Or seen anything like this.
Yeah, I'm aware that this took place in the Victorian era, and unfortunately, even today, I go to a lot of expos, a lot of events, healing and wellness expos, and I know that some of the psychics at that event are making it up. But you get good plumbers and bad plumbers.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm fully aware that there's psychics out there and spiritualists that see this as a quick way to make money and not have any skills. The only thing I would add to that is you soon get found out. If you don't deliver the goods at some point, you can talk as much as you want, but at some point you're going to have someone's parents or grandmother come through.
Oh, for sure.
And if you're left wanting, then you're going to look like an idiot, ultimately.
Oh, yeah, big time. Here's another one here. I don't know if there's any... Oh, there's a hand down there, Pete. If you zoom in, you see the hand coming up. And I don't know if that's just some double exposure or something, but that was another one on that website.
That's the end of the Terminator where the hand's just coming out. They just got in first. Look.
Looks like the hand's holding a camera phone, like just taking a selfie.
Yeah, an old vintage selfie.
Regardless, it's a cool picture.
His family's happy because they eat lard. I don't know where that came from. I can only apologize.
These pictures are scary, though. Super scary.
Wow,
Here,
got a glimpse of a knee there. Look at that. That's outrageous.
here, I thought this one was creepy too. All the hands, and I don't know, Adrian, normally, how you do it, if everyone's holding hands, or if you have everyone's hands on the table, or if there's any hands in it. But it seems like a lot of these, they have their hands involved.
You are supposed to put your hands together, touch fingers.
Oh, really?
In my experience, it doesn't matter. I'm talking to dead people, and the dead person stands next to me and normally talks in my right ear, and I can normally see them. Whether we're holding hands or not has no influence on that process. So I don't know whether that's for theatre.
Oh, okay.
You can imagine the idea of sitting around a table and there's a single light bulb flickering. Are you there, Uncle Arthur? There is an element of theatre about this, I think.
Gotcha.
My work is much more matter of fact. Oh, I've got your mother here. This is what she's got to say for herself.
Huh.
You've never done light as a feather, stiff as a board? Either?
No, what is that?
Oh, I haven't either.
Oh, I've never even heard of it.
And you have someone plank. Have you heard of it? Yeah.
I'm aware of. I've never done that,
no.
but we'll have to try that.
It's a sleepover. It's a sleepover thing when you're younger.
What do you do? I've never even heard of it.
We were too busy playing the GameCube.
He's playing with planks of wood. You've got an Xbox out. That's right.
Big See, here's another one, Adrian. What you were saying, they're all putting their fingers
the stuff,
together.
Yeah.
There's some creepy looking guys.
Oh, yeah.
That one is,
That's a creep. Look at the girl right next to the guy, too. Look at her eyes.
Both of them.
That guy there with the arrow over him died 6 hours ago and no one's noticed.
That's a White Walker.
That's right.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know if there's any more Peter on there, but
No, that looks like a council meeting for Wyndham. That's City Hall right there.
It's a massive slapjack tournament.
That's funny. So
Should joke about that.
And the other thing I had on here was you're not supposed to break the contact until you let the... Or I don't know if it's similar to like the Ouija board, but you have to denounce, or not denounce, but hang up on the spirit or something. Is there... Or is that just more theatre, too?
Yeah, this is all theatre. I can only go by my own personal experience, but there's spirits all around us.
Yep.
And it's very matter of fact. They talk to me like I'm talking to you. We don't need to be sat in the dark.
Yep.
We could be having a cup of tea in Starbucks. I've done readings in Starbucks at Barnes & Noble, where people in the cities want to meet me, and we meet halfway in Mankato. I would have my notepad here.
Yep.
And I would say, okay. And I've sat with a cup of coffee in Starbucks
Yep.
doing a reading. I think a lot of this Victoriana and Edwardianism is to do with theatre.
Gotcha.
You know, and there's an element of a fishing wire attached to the curtains, and someone's got a mandolin and it's hanging up in the background.
And it's probably from aristocrats who have money. They probably pay good money to have someone come in once in a while. Yeah. Or it's to have that aura around them that, hey, we're doing this. Like, we're important.
Yeah. You're saying more like entertainment kind of.
Right, like what Adrian just said.
But for my own personal experience, it's just matter of fact. If someone came around now, they'd be talking to me. I can break it off whenever. They might go away and come back again. There's sometimes I'm doing a reading and it takes an hour and a half, and 20 minutes in it might fade away, and I'll have to think about it, and they'll come back again. And there is no rules. Nothing bad's going to happen. I'm talking to your grandmother.
Yeah.
What's she going to do? I mean, do you know what I mean? There's no sense that anything bad's going to happen. She's not demonic or anything.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole spirit world out there, and it's me and you. And most people are genuinely nice. If you fell over in the car park, if you broke down on I-94, someone would come and help you. Most people are nice.
Hopefully.
We watch the news every night, and all you see is murder and doom and gloom and people being kidnapped.
World's ending.
But 99% of the population is actually very nice. And we're all nice people, right? We're friendly, we're polite.
Most of the time, I think.
Most of the time.
You have your moments. But
Minnesota nice.
Yeah, Minnesota nice.
It's the same when we're dead. We're still the same person when we're dead.
Yeah.
So... There's no rules. There's no sense that you can't break it off or we should all be holding hands. It's much more simpler at that and much more kind of easygoing and laid back, to be honest.
No, that makes sense. All right, next one I got for you, Bloody Mary. I'm just going through.
That goes with my earlier one.
Communication. Is that like the flag and the feathers?
I'll take one of those. Yeah, why not? Just no celery in mine.
While we're talking about communication, I mean that's another thing I could think of. Bloody Mary, shutting the lights off, lighting a candle. Is that something that is a realistic thing, or is that more?
It could happen because you're summoning them. You're asking them to appear, and she was a real person. So there's no. If we did that now, she may appear. Because we're mentioning her name. Suddenly in the spirit realm, it's like, oh, someone just asked for me.
Yep.
So I don't think you need the mirror and the candle. If you just ask for someone and they want to come along, they can do that. So I can believe that she would appear because you've asked for her, you've summoned her, you've gone and got her in effect. Whether she wants to hang out here or not, it remains to be seen. I mean, she might be happy where she is.
Yeah.
So I can understand that could happen and you could manifest that for sure.
Yep.
I wouldn't mess around with things you don't know anything about, first and foremost.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we could have, Bloody Mary following us around for the next 3 weeks, and I've got things to do. I'm busy. I can't be having dead queens of Scotland following me around while I'm trying to do my shopping. And
for sure.
Have you seen Beetlejuice, Ethan?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing.
That's funny, yeah.
I have got books at home in my library. I'm not a demonologist. If I come across things that are dark, I leave them alone.
Yep.
I'm not interested. But I have books at home on demonology, and they're in alphabet order from A through to Z, and they're all listed. And it's not a good idea to read their names out because their names are very unusual. So while you're reading the book, if you mention them by name, you could summon that entity just by having an unusual name. Do you know the fairy tale with Rumpelstiltskin? Yeah. He's got such an unusual name that when it's mentioned, he appears. Well, imagine that with demonography. So sometimes it's not a good idea to mention their names out loud because somewhere in the world they'll be like, someone's just asked for me. You're raising their energy by discussing them by name. So I'm not an expert in that area, but knowledge is power, of course.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that brings me to the next thing then. What about, what do you think, or do you even think it's real? Spells, that kind of thing. Or is there any truth to that, or is that more?
That's all about intentions. I'm a firm believer in laws of attraction and putting the intention out there. So when I write my books, I designed the jacket for this book years before the book was published, before I'd even written anything, because I'm putting the intention out there that this is what I want to manifest, this is what I want to happen. So with spells...
Are you saying spells from ghosts or spells from the living?
Spells, like you'd see in movies or whatever.
Paganism.
Witchcraft type stuff.
I have some issues with witchcraft as a Christian, and they're not the kind of issues you would think. Nowhere in the Bible does it criticize witchcraft on any level. There is a moment where I believe the Witch of Endor is summoned up, Samuel I think it is, and God doesn't chastise the witch. He just says, well, you should have come through me. You shouldn't have got a witch to have done that for you. So nowhere in the Bible does it actually attack witchcraft. The King James Bible, which was translated at the beginning of 1600, was translated in such a way that they misrepresented some of the words. King James, his wife, was from a Scandinavian country and she was involved in a shipwreck. And I think it was Denmark. And there was a lot of witches in Denmark that claimed they'd put spells on the ship to make it sink. So he mistranslated the King James Bible on purpose to use as a weapon to then go around burning witches, and he mistranslated it on purpose.
Really?
There's places where he puts the word witch in, where if you go back to the original Aramaic or Hebrew, it actually says poisoner, for example. So he mistranslated the Bible on purpose to attack witches. The only thing I would say about witchcraft, and my ex-wife was a high priestess and run a coven, so I do have a background in this, even though I'm Christian. I learned through osmosis. You see where we are. I do have a problem that there's some people within paganism and witchcraft, and in every religion, nice Christian people and terrible Christian people.
Oh, yeah.
So this isn't a blanket generalization, because I know people that practice paganism and witchcraft, and that's obviously older than Christianity, right? By some distance.
Yeah.
But those that are unscrupulous, those that aren't necessarily working for the best interests of anyone other than themselves. If I want something, I pray to God, and God decides whether I get that or not. And all that God requires is my unrelenting love and faith. That's the only exchange taking place. I think we start to get in some very difficult areas if Brad isn't taking you to the prom, but you do a spell to make Brad take you to the prom. Because that's very egocentric. It's all about me and not the other person.
Is that real, though? Is that a real thing?
I think you can put intentions out there to make that happen.
Really?
I believe that can take place with intentions and putting that out there. The other thing I would add is that as a Christian, when I see pagan people and witchcraft worshipping the moon goddess, for example, or trees and earth, that's fabulous. That's very similar, of course, to Native American culture. And there are parts of my studies that would follow that. A Christian person would say, well, you need to follow and worship the creator, not the creation. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also a payoff. If you do a spell, it's not free. You hear about the guy at the crossroads wanting to be a blues guitarist. It's not free. If I ask God for something and he deems it fit that I should get it, like I said, the only thing that's required is my faith in him. If you do a spell, it's a trade-off. They will take something off of you later on down the line. So I've nothing against witchcraft. I've got nothing against any religion. Some of my own practice is very Buddhist, very Native American. Of course, I love the earth, and I use crystals in my own work as a healer, but I'm using them as a tool. I'm not worshipping the crystal. God made the crystal. I'm using it. God created grapes. We make wine. God created leaves. We make tea. God creates crystals. I heal people with those tools. We use diamond-tipped scalpels in operations. You've got quartz crystals in your cell phones right now and in that laptop. So we're not worshipping the crystal, but we're using what God provides us. So to answer your question, I believe spells can work. I believe that's just an intention, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've already discussed intentions and laws of attraction.
Oh, yeah.
I just have some issues with some of the more unscrupulous people that follow paganism that are very egocentric and are doing things for them rather than the benefit of others. And we get that in every single religion. You can go to church right now and tell the people standing there which one's the alcoholic, which one's beating his wife, which one's having the affair. I mean, there is a hypocrisy within that, I guess. But your religion is between you and God and no one else's business.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Uh-huh. No, that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
I'm sure I've made some people unhappy.
No, you can never make everyone happy.
If you're wishing death upon someone, eventually it's going to happen.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean,
it will creep up on you.
Good point. Good point, Damon.
That's the best point we've heard this whole podcast, Damon.
Yes, I don't know why I've been talking for half an hour. What was I thinking?
Well, we could bring up your pictures, Adrian, because I told Adrian to bring some stuff, and he brought some things that have happened to him, some scratches and scars. You can kind of explain.
I'm actually wearing
these.
the same shirt.
Well, you don't have the mark there anymore, do you?
This
Scar
is the
or
only
anything?
shirt I own, I might add.
So do you kind of want to explain these, Adrian, what we're looking at here?
Sure.
It looks like
This was in a coffee shop in a town not too far from here. And
not Starbucks, I hope.
Not Starbucks, no. This was a renovation. I walked into the shop and they were doing a renovation. There was entities in there that were very unhappy with things being moved around and renovated. And on the top floor of that building, there was a Masonic lodge, and they'd worshipped in that Masonic lodge in the 1880s onwards. So there is a history of energy in that building. There's a history of summoning things that perhaps aren't human.
For those of you not seeing this and listening, it's distinctive 3 scratches down the right side of Adrian's neck.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
3 scratches are very significant because that's talons at that point. That's non-human. And also, pastors have told me that when they see scratches in rows of 3, that's almost mocking the Holy Trinity. So I actually got scratched down my neck walking into that property.
Wow.
So there was something there that didn't want me to be there. And if that's the best they can do, if you've got God as your armor, you can walk through the gates of Hades and not get scorched. If you're scared or afraid of these things, it basically shows that you don't have any faith, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry, Colin, go ahead.
Did you feel that then when that happened?
I didn't, no. No? One of the people that was in the shop refurbishing actually had to point that out to me and said, "What's that on your neck?" And I actually never felt that. Some of them, when I've been assaulted and physically attacked, I felt. But that one, that's a good question. I never felt that one.
Wow,
I didn't know
weird.
that happened
That's
until
crazy.
it was pointed out
After that,
to
do
me.
you have the feeling that since you've been touched, that entity can travel to you whenever it feels like, or no?
No, they're not that powerful. No. I have no fear.
Can't
like
see
I
what
said,
you see.
Yeah, that wouldn't concern me greatly. If that's all they've got, then I'm not concerned.
Huh.
That's almost a case of I want your attention. Well, you've got it. Now what do you want?
Does that scare you then when something like that happens, or is it just?
No, I've in 25 years I've never been scared. There's been occasions I've been concerned, and there's a difference between.
Well, does it concern you or no?
That doesn't concern me. No, I have no issue with that. I have blind faith that I've got God as my armor, and that's not going to cause me any bother. If that's all they've got, that doesn't concern me. You can get that if you're a kindergarten teacher on a daily basis. Right.
Let's see what else has got on here, Pete.
This was the study of a big mansion house up in Superior.
Wow.
Called Forlorn. If you go to Fairlawn Mansion, it's a huge mansion. It was built by a lumber baron called Martin Patterson. It's a fantastic house if you get a chance up there in Superior. Massive building. a very wealthy family. He also earned a lot of money in the mines.
Old Victorian style mansion?
Absolutely.
Wow.
A really fabulous building if you get a chance to go up to Superior and look at that. That's his study. And I took 5 photographs using a tripod, no flash, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And I used a cable release, and I took 5 photographs, all from the same position. And in just one of the photographs, that blue face appears in the desk. So
I'll go back. I saw it there, yeah.
So I tried blowing that up, and I've got that
in
in black and white. It's a bit Scooby-Doo, to be honest. It looks like a ghoul of some description.
Oh, my gosh.
It's Old Man Withers from the amusement island.
Yeah. Dang.
And that never appeared in the other controlled photographs. There was only one picture that appeared in, so it's transient, it's moving around.
That's creepy.
I
You could see the eye holes.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Am I anyway?
No, you're good. You're good.
I wondered if that was something to do with Masonic practice, because Martin Patterson was high up in the Masonic temple.
I was going to say, it kind of looks like a mask.
So I think it may have been something to do, and I think they have an exhibition of Masonic regalia up there. And
Some of them wore some skull masks and
Yeah.
other types of masks.
So I just think that may be something left over from Masonic practice. I have investigated some Masonic temples over the years. There's a really good one in Pipestone.
Oh, really?
And I investigated the Masonic temple in Superior, plus the headquarters of the Masons in Clerkenwell in East London, actually.
Really?
So there was a time the Masons were very private and wouldn't let you see anything, but now
Yeah.
I've really got good access to those buildings.
Huh.
But it just looks more Masonic. I assume that to be a mask of some description. And in the next photograph, I turned it black and white and played around with the contrast a little bit just to give you an idea.
Wow. That is really creepy.
But again, that's an anomaly. It should have appeared in all 5 photographs, right?
Yeah. Wow. Oh, yeah. These are really bad
This
ones.
was taken some years ago. This was probably about 10 years ago. And this was in the Mounds Theatre in Eastside St Paul. And I was conducting an investigation in the basement. And one of the women on the investigation team said, "I've just been scratched." And as you're fully aware, if you're investigating in Minnesota for 8 months of the year, it's very cold. So this was in February, I believe, and everyone was wearing big snow coats and lots of layers. It wasn't like we were just down there in a T-shirt and a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
And she said, "Something's just happened. I feel like I've been attacked." So we dragged her up the stairs, put her in the auditorium on the seating, and she lifted up the back of her shirt and took her snow jacket off. And she's got, again, 3 talon marks clawing out from the spine out towards her ribs.
Wow.
And she couldn't have done that herself, and certainly no one in the team could have done that with all the layers that she had on.
And her jacket wasn't scratched. There wasn't holes through it.
No, just it was underneath the jacket.
That's crazy.
So again, just an example of some physicality. Obviously someone didn't want us down there, I would suggest.
Oh, for sure. It doesn't look like it.
Talons again in groups of 3.
Wow. Now, I think we might have seen this one. This is the soap factory, right?
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, I always liked this one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was the big furnace where they would boil up all of the lye on the floor above to make soap with. And it was pitch black in the basement. And I used, again, a cable release and a tripod.
Wow.
And it was very dark. This may have been a 20, 30-second exposure, so it looks quite light.
Yeah.
But when I was actually in that room, I couldn't see most of what is available there.
Wow.
And you've just got, via the sense of motion, a ghost appearing on the left and walking through. So you've got, imagine like a sense of movement, like it's a 20-second exposure. You've got it coming into the frame. So you've actually got the locomotion. You've actually got the movement.
Zoom in there, Pete. It looks like a ghost, like a nun or something, holding its hand on its side. You see that? What I'm talking about there? Almost like the hand is tucked in, kind of like what I'm doing here. Like the hand is like tucked up. You see that? It looks like a fist. Like, Pete, you see the fist right there?
Right here?
No, over to the right. To the right. Right there. That looks like a fist tucked up.
Something's definitely moving. And again, I took 5 photographs, and it only appears in the one.
Yeah.
But that's a really nice photograph of a ghost.
That's creepy.
In the soap factory, which is a miserable pit of a building.
Oh, yeah.
This is the North Shore Theatre in Duluth. I was standing in the lobby. We were setting up the equipment, and I got bitten. So that's almost like a child's bite mark on the back of my hand. I actually felt this one. I didn't feel the scratch marks, but I felt the ghost child bite me. I don't think this was malevolent. I just think this was a child's spirit. And my hands are down by my side.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be a 3 or 4 year old at that height.
Wow.
And it bit me. And so I took a photograph of the bite mark. And I think every child of a certain age, if you're a parent, goes through a biting stage, an oral stage.
Yeah.
I don't think this was anything mean and dark. I just think this was a kid trying to get my attention. But yeah, it bit me. I got bitten.
Wow.
I love this. This is a joy. We're in the basement of Edinburg Manor. And Edinburg Manor was on Ghost Adventures. I think it was the first episode.
Really?
Maybe series 7, I want to say. And that's one of my team leaders. This is a gentleman who's based up in Superior. And he's sitting in the laundry room in the basement. And Edinburg Manor was a poor farm. And it also got used as a low-level mental asylum. And it's an abandoned building. And he said to me, I feel like there's a dog or an animal brushing against my legs. And I said, well, let me get a thermal imaging camera out. So I'm using a FLIR. It's a thermal imaging camera. And the blue that you're seeing represents cold areas and cold spots. This is the kind of device that they use in earthquakes to see bodies buried in the rubble.
Yeah.
And I said, put your hand out, because I can see a dog wandering around. So my investigator said he could feel something brushing against his legs.
Wow.
I took the camera out. I could see the dog walking around, and I told him to put his hand out and start petting. And I gave him directions as to where his hand should be. And this is a photograph of one of my investigators petting
That's crazy.
A ghost dog.
And it almost looks like you could see the collar there, like the blue disappears right by his hand. It looks like a collar right there. That's funny.
And if we move to the next picture, you see the dog walking around. It's moving about. There's the next one.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got a whole series of photographs of the dog, and you can see its 4 legs in other photographs I've got. But there's not many people that have photographs of ghost animals.
Yeah, that's
crazy. And that would be a good example of that.
Is it a camera they're holding back at you?
Yes, yeah, he's got an IR camera in his hand, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
he's pointing an IR camera back at me. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Is that typical to see animals? I mean, I guess we've never really talked about that either. Animals are all around us, ghost animals.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've seen a lot of ghost horses. I've seen ghost dogs. When I was at the Battle of Birch Coulee, I've investigated the battlefield. September the 2nd, September the 3rd, 1862 was the biggest loss of life the US Army suffered during the Dakota War, and they killed 90 horses.
Really?
They were surrounded by the Dakota. They were in a really bad position, very badly defended, and they basically got picked off for 2 days solid. Several members of my investigation team saw a horse running around the battlefield. And there's several historical accounts, and I've written about this, of horses running around. Captain Grant saw all the horses being slaughtered, and his horse was tethered, so he got his sabre and cut the lead to let the horse free, so it wasn't a sitting target.
Wow.
And for the 2 days, you saw Captain Grant's horse running around the battlefield.
Ulysses S. Grant or whatever.
Not that Grant, no.
Different one.
Different Grant. That would be great if it was.
Yeah.
This is cinema, but that's one of the hard and sad parts of watching the Game of Thrones battle.
Oh, really? I've never watched it.
No spoilers, but
yeah, I'll say careful with that. No, we have some files on here, Adrian, and I actually have a video that was sent to me. If you go, Pete, back to the main files, it's a video that someone showed me on Twitter, and it was actually one of my friend's friends. It's the other
one in the middle,
Ethan
Pete.
Clare, yeah. And so to give you a little brief before we watch it, Pete, just pause it right away. To give you a little brief background, this girl is at home or at a friend's house watching dogs, like dog sitting.
Sure.
She's the only one home. She came over there to feed the dogs, and you can see in the background in that doorway a guy walks by, and she's the only one there.
Right.
Her friends are on vacation. So watch this video, Pete. Just play it through here. Go if you could kind of skip through it, Pete. If you grab you see the dogs, and then in the background, right?
Something moves from door to door.
Yeah, Pete. If you grab the slider and actually like go through it slowly, you'll see the guy walking right
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's creepy, and I don't know if you have any videos similar to this where you can catch a shadow moving quickly across.
Yeah, we've got lots of video footage. If you invite me on again, I'll bring some video footage with me. That FLIR camera, you could waste your life because you can look through a 1-inch by 1-inch screen, and that FLIR, you can see humanoid figures walking around everywhere.
Really?
You could literally spend your life viewing the world through a 1-inch square screen, all the stuff you're missing. And we have full spectrum cameras that record and show in a wider spectrum that we can actually see. So they go to the extremes of infrared and the extremes of UV. And you can literally see humanoid figures and people wandering around on your camera, and you look up and with your own eyesight, you can't see anything. And you go back to the camera and you can see everything presented to you.
Huh.
But how many times have you seen a cat or a dog suddenly look around?
That's what I was about to ask, yeah.
And they can see stuff. I have a pug, and I'm sat in my house, and my house was built in the 1880s. And I'm sat watching the television with the pug, and suddenly in the dining room, the dog suddenly shows some interest, and you can tell it's looking. And as a psychic, I go to look as well, and I can see there's stuff there. It's a very old house. I'm sure the person who just walked from room to room genuinely believes it's 1910 and it's in his house, and he's just going about his everyday business.
Yeah.
He might not even be aware that person's there. For him, it's 1910.
Did your friend see that real time, or did she send that video to show that dog was okay?
She sent it to somebody, and then the friend saw that and recorded it. And then sent it back and be like, "Who?"
Nice.
They asked, "Who was that guy?" And she said, "What guy?" Showed her the video.
Did she flip out when she saw it again?
Flipped out.
You wouldn't want to carry on sitting there with the dogs. Would
No.
you, knowing
No.
that's
Well,
going
I mean,
on?
either a ghost or someone broke into the house.
Then did she have any recollections? Did she go back and think like?
I mean, I don't even know.
Did she have to go back and check on the dogs?
I don't
again?
even know her. It's actually Luke Gilbertson's friend, because he's the one that told me about the video. It's actually his friend was dog sitting, and just very creepy experience.
She probably wanted to get paid more going back the next time.
Well, we don't know the context, but if you actually look at the video as a whole,
Yeah, play it one more time.
those dogs are running away from that entity.
Yeah, that's what I was
So
going to
do
say.
those dogs actually know that entity's there? Because look, the dog comes running, the dogs, and they're running away from the entity. So did the dogs see that entity and come running out?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe
Because if there was someone in the house, the dog's either going to fight or flight.
Yep.
And those dogs have fled.
It's not
Yeah.
the dog's tail, though, is it? No. We have to slow it down.
Hey, you see that? You can see the shadow on the door.
No, it does look like a person walking by, 100%.
I wonder if the dogs saw that and knew that was imminent, and so have made a run.
That
for
is
it.
a good thing though, Damon. What if it is the tail? It does look like a guy
It
walking
would
by.
take some analysis. It does look good.
No, look,
I'm
you
not-
could see
I'm
the
not-
shadow
I'm
on
not
the door.
I'm not
Yeah.
slamming the video.
That
I'm just
shadow,
saying.
you can see the
Okay.
guy's head looking around the corner. There's no way the dog's tail
Yeah,
is
true.
that long, I would suggest.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's a creepy video. When I saw it, I got shivers.
It's coolly shot. I don't know what
Yeah.
she was just showing the dogs.
And it looks like an old building.
It looks like an old house, doesn't it, with the brick and everything?
There's an older chair.
And I wish I had more context to kind of
Sure.
figure out how old, we could figure some more details out. I don't know the person at all, but I thought it was a creepy video,
Yeah,
kind
it
of a
is.
first-hand experience. And there's another video on here, Pete, the other one on there, and this is called, this guy goes out. I think he's actually got a flare camera,
Right.
and you can see these, you have to skip into the video a little bit, Pete. You can actually see behind the headstones when he goes to night mode. When he comes back at night, you can see heads peeking out behind the headstones. And we'll watch this here quick.
That's quite common, by the way. When I'm in cemeteries, you get hundreds of people looking at you, seeing who you are, poking their heads around trees. That is a common phenomenon I've experienced.
Really?
Yeah.
And there's actually, you can see somebody walk by here when he goes to, skip ahead a little bit, Pete, to when he goes to the night mode. It should be coming up here. All right, so watch here. Look on the, right along the headstone, you can see heads peeking out.
Peekaboo, there you go.
And you could clearly see its movement.
Sure. This sums up what I said earlier about the fact that some of these cameras see things that you can't see with your own eyes.
Yeah.
And that would be a good example. I've seen ghosts and spirits look around people. I was in the bowling alley of the Chase on the Lake Hotel up in Walker, and I've got a great photograph of a ghost looking around one of my investigation team to see what's taking place.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you see that? Did you see that walk by there on there? Go back a little bit, Pete. Right in the background, something's walking right there.
Sure.
Is this a flare camera or what is this?
I think he just has night vision.
Oh,
rather
gotcha.
Than being a flare.
Would it? Because it'd show up as blue if
That's
it was
right,
okay.
Yeah, he'd have filters on that.
Huh.
The trouble is that some of these cameras can give false positives because with a flare, for example, you could get a reflection off of a shiny granite headstone of another member of the team.
Yep.
So you might get reflective infrared. You might get a reflection of heat. If I put my hand on this book
Yep.
or I put my footprints on the floor, 20 minutes later, even if I do it very briefly, you can come along with a thermal imaging camera and that handprint's still there.
Really?
Those footprints are still there.
Wow.
There's episodes of Ghost Hunters where they show on the TV and Ghost Adventures where they say, look, there's footprints. And I'm thinking, yes, that was the cameraman 10 minutes ago, and it's still being registered and still being picked up. So you have to be aware with this kind of technology that you can get false positives. I'm not suggesting this is the case here.
Yeah.
But you could get IR beams reflected off of shiny surfaces. You can get false positives by leaving heat behind that gets picked up 20 minutes later. It's amazing how hot our bodies are.
Oh, yeah.
And how a handprint can stay on a wall or a door half an hour after you've left it there. It's remarkable.
I just thought that was creepy, the peeking out behind the tombstones, whatever, like the little girl. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is a little girl, but peeking out.
It's interesting, for sure.
Yeah.
It's paranormal because we don't know what it is, and science can't prove it.
Yeah, unless they're out there faking something, having somebody look. But it is a creepy video for sure. Another thing I wrote down on here, crystal balls. Anything, what do you think about that?
I think crystal ball. I have one. I have a crystal ball. Yeah,
actual crystal.
An actual crystal ball, not a glass one. Proper crystal. A crystal ball is just a focus for you to look at. So I don't think there's anything going on within the crystal ball. But if you go and see a psychic, I just think it's a focal point. So it's a place where they can focus. It's a place where they can look into and meditate and see what's coming through. If I'm doing a reading for someone, my crystal ball is this notepad. So while I'm thinking about what's coming through, while I'm having a conversation with the spirit world, I'll be doing little drawings, looking at my pad, moving my pen around, doodling, doing some squiggles. So that's my crystal ball, would be that. Some people like the idea of having a focus so they can stare into it and you're in a meditatory state and you're seeing things in your third eye.
Yeah.
So you couldn't look into the crystal ball and see stuff. It wouldn't be there. But for the psychic doing that, it's a focus. And if you do meditation, you're supposed to focus. There's exercises you can do where you look at candle flames. There's things you can focus on. It's a focus.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be there. And again, it adds an element of theatre, doesn't it? You can go into the room and everyone's gathered around the crystal ball. But I think it's a tool, personally, to focus on rather than being a device that you're seeing stuff through like we are on the television screen, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And one other thing that I have... kind of a final thing to wrap it up here. This is one of the things I wrote down, and it was in a video I was watching. It was about a lady talking about how only certain people can come in contact with spirits or ghosts. Other people don't have the skill, if you want to put it that way.
Sure.
And I wanted to get your opinion on that. Is it something really that you are inherit, or you just have that skill, or is it something that anybody can do?
Anyone can do it.
Really?
I actually teach psychic development class. I have actually trained a lot of people that are now psychics and make a living out of being psychic where I've trained them up. Let's imagine drawing. There's always someone in your class that's better than drawing than everyone else, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I can't sit with you for a year and teach you how to draw and you would get better. It's all to do with technique. It's to do with process. If we all went over the golf course now and we played golf for a year, we'd come back better golfers, you would hope, wouldn't you? So being psychic isn't a God-given gift. It's not unique. You can train people to be psychic, but like any other skill, like drawing, there's going to be some people that are better at drawing than others.
Naturally.
But can you all produce a good drawing? Well, of course you can. So I can train people to be psychic. I bet every single person listening to this show and watching this show right now has had a moment where they think of someone and then their cell phone rings and they look and it's them.
Yeah.
Everyone's had that.
Yeah.
There's been moments in your life when you've had a moment of fear, or you get a feeling of dread that something's happened.
Yep.
And then you hear later that a family friend or a member of your family has died or been in an accident. There's moments where you're lost and you don't know where you're going. And you have this gut instinct that you need to go left, and you turn the car left and it's where you need to go.
Yep.
There's people that have bought houses just by walking up the path and thinking, I love this house. I've not even been in there yet. I'm going to buy it.
Yep.
And on the other hand, you walk up the path and think, oh, I'm not buying this house. But you've not got any good reason to know that or wonder why you think that.
Yep.
That's being psychic. But I do it every day. And you just get a little glimpse of it every other month.
So it's something that's more taught, or you learn it. It's not something that you're born with.
That's you can be born with it, and that would give you a head start.
Yeah.
But I can teach you to be a psychic in the same way that people are born that are just naturally good drawers. But I could also train you to draw very well.
And you'd probably be surprised, or maybe not surprised, like how many people say, I cannot draw. And then you ask them, well, when's the last time that you tried?
Yeah.
I've never tried. You know, like
exactly.
I'm not an artist. Well, how you can't draw wrong?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You can draw.
taught art. I was an art teacher for 15 years in Europe. If I thought I couldn't teach you to draw, I've just wasted my entire career. But there's children that I got at 11 that didn't know one end of a pencil from another, and by the time they're 18, they've gone to art college and they're fabulous artists because I taught them how to draw and paint. Yeah. You may not necessarily be Michelangelo, but you're going to be painting and drawing to a standard that's going to get you to art college and get you a job in a creative profession.
Or kids will draw something and be like, is this good? You don't have to ask. Yes, it is good.
Huh.
Like, there's no wrong way to do it.
And that's maybe for being a psychic too. There's no wrong. Maybe there is a wrong way to do it, but everyone's got their own way of doing it.
Sure.
Talking to them, like you mentioned, the crystal balls or the doing the tarot cards.
All I've got is my own opinion. My own opinion, of course, is based on wisdom, knowledge, and a lifetime of doing it. But I only have my opinion. If another person was sat here, they may argue with some of the points I've made, and that's perfectly fine. I've only got my own experiences to present to you, and someone else may have different experiences. That doesn't make one wrong or one right. And all I've got to offer you is my opinion. I don't have anything else at the end of the day, but I will back my opinion up with facts.
Oh, yeah.
That's as a historian.
And every time you come on, you always have the books and you always have a bunch of facts, and we always go through. And you are for being a paranormal guy, Adrian, you are very skeptical. I got to give you that.
You are very hugely skeptical.
Normally when you think of paranormal people, you're probably thinking they believe anything.
Yeah, we don't have to blur out Adrian.
Digitize me.
Yeah.
I mean, no mark against anyone else.
But I mean, Adrian comes on every time, and you always are questioning stuff and always wondering, is that real or is that fake? And you always have stories to back that up on your own experiences. And I appreciate that.
That's very kind of you. I've been kicked off many Facebook sites when someone's put a picture of some dust up and said this is an orb, and I write back and say, no, it's not. It's dust. And they say, how do you know that? Well, I've got a secondary degree in photography. Yep. And if you bash your sofa and take a photograph, you can look at all the thousands of spirits you've set free.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, on that note, Adrian, it's been awesome having you. We're going to leave this part up for you to kind of promote what you're doing, because we know you do a bunch of awesome stuff. You got your own radio show. Mm-hmm. Tell people about some of the stuff you're working on and where they can find you at.
Sure. I have a radio show every Friday night. You can catch me on the Dark Matter Digital Network at 10 p.m. Central Time. We are the only paranormal news quiz show anywhere in the world. It's a comedic show. I host the show of the world's news of the paranormal. People think we're funny. Mm-hmm. Obviously, no one around this table. But
I've listened a couple times. It's funny.
We are the second highest rated digital talk radio show at that time slot anywhere in the world. The only person who's beaten me is Rush Limbaugh. We have 100,000 listeners in 190 countries.
Wow.
You can catch the archives now. If you go to SoundCloud at this very minute, go to MQTA Radio. There's 6 years worth of shows on there, and you can listen to them back to back if you've got a long journey, if you're exploring abandoned buildings in Kansas or wherever you happen to be, walking your ghost dog. You can listen to those shows, and we're very popular. And we have a Facebook site, More Questions and Answers with Adrian Lee. I have many books out. I've written books on Wyndham. I've written books on the local area, Jackson, the history of the Midwest. So if you're interested in ghosts and history and paranormal and all the photographs, all the stories, all of the history, I have Mysterious Midwest and I have Mysterious Minnesota. They're available on Amazon. And if you've read my books, if you could leave me a nice review, I'd be very grateful. If you didn't like the books, then obviously don't write anything at all. And we did touch for some time on Christianity. And I'm not here to preach. Everyone's religion is up to them. But I have written the book, How to Be a Christian Psychic. So some of the things we mentioned about Christianity, some of the things we mentioned about how to train yourself to be psychic, how to be a Christian psychic, what the Bible says about mediums, healers, and paranormal investigators. And that is my best-selling book. You'd be amazed how many people.
Is there a chapter on angels in there? A lot about angels? I remember seeing you do a talk on angels.
I absolutely talk about angels in there. Yeah, I remember that talk. Yeah, absolutely. So I was just unhappy with the amount of people that would abuse me and say, how can you be a Christian and still be a paranormal investigator and a psychic? And I thought, you couldn't have read the good book. The good book from front to back is prophecies, healing, dreams, ghosts, and I just list them. It's not an anti-Christian book. It's actually brought a lot of people back to Christianity that had psychic skills and have seen ghosts, and their local pastor told them it was a demon or they shouldn't be seeing that stuff. Which is, of course, is not what's written in the good book. So those are my books. Go to Amazon, you can see those things. And I have a couple of books out very shortly. We mentioned the ghosts and UFOs. And perhaps you can get me back and we can talk about the Dakota War. The ghosts and hauntings of the Dakota War, because that affects of course, this area of the country that we're in, and I'd be happy to come back and talk about those as well. So
when are those coming out then, Adrian? The UFO book and the Native American one.
The Ghost and UFO book, I've just sent a second draft back to my publisher. That should be out within the next couple of months. So look out for that around July. All things being equal. And I would hope around October for the Dakota War book, maybe around Halloween. Come back, talk about the ghosts and hauntings of the Dakota War in 1862, and have a Halloween special would be a good thing.
That's awesome, because last Halloween special, I think we just messed around and.
That's what that wax is.
That's what I do. All I do is mess around. I do nothing but mess around.
You're smart though when you mess around. We're just sitting around lighting candles and watching Halloween movies.
I'm messing around with an English accent. It does make a big difference, right?
Awesome. Well, Adrian, really appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you. And everyone, I will put the links to all of Adrian's stuff, including the Facebook page, Dark Matter Web, all of the stuff we talked about, the book. I'll put all the links for that in the description, so you definitely can go check all those out. It's always awesome having you, Adrian, and it's been a great conversation, and I feel like we could continue talking all night if we wanted to. But for the sake of everyone and for the continuation of future episodes, we will cut it short here. So thank you very much for tuning in to the Ethan Claire podcast show. Make sure you also share, comment, retweet, subscribe, like, do whatever you got to do. Leave us a good review if you like it. Like Adrian said, if you didn't like it, don't say anything. Don't say anything.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
Peter, thank you very much for coming back as a producer.
Yes,
Colin and Damon, great to have you guys back on. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure who we will be talking to, but hopefully it'll be someone as smart as Adrian, or smarter, if we can find somebody.
Good luck with that.
Thank you very much for watching the Ethan Claire podcast show. We'll see you next week.